Dear students, in today's lecture, let's make an attempt to know about weed management in Mulberry. Introduction. Weeds are unwanted and undesirable plants which interfere with the utilization of land and water resources and thus adversely affect human welfare. In broad term, they are referred to as plants out of place. This implies that the weeds grow where we do not want them to grow. However, a crop in one country may be a weed in another. Out of 3 lakhs known plant species, nearly 30,000 species are found to behave as weeds. The weeds not only grow in cultivated lands but also grow in other places like water bodies, water channels, industrials and urban sites, roadsides, railway lines, etc. and in many instances interfere in the man's daily affairs. They are harmful and interfere with the agriculture operations, increase labor input, add to the cultivation cost and reduce the crop yields. It is estimated that in India of the total annual loss of agricultural produce, weeds alone account for 45%. Other include insects 30%, diseases 20% and other pests 5%. With regard to mulberry cultivation, there are many types of weeds which interfere with the crop production. They can be broadly classified into monocots and dicots. Among the monocot type, Cyprus rotundus and Cynodon dactylan are perennial in nature and drain out a huge amount of nutrients and water from mulberry field. Dicots are mostly broad leaf weeds, of which Parthenium hirsetophorus has become most obnoxious and prevalent weed in mulberry. Their control has become more important in recent days. Other most common weeds occurring in mulberry garden are Bovania diffusa, Saida acuta, Amaranthus hybridus, Tridax procumbens, Solanum nigrum, Ipomia indica, Acalypha indica, Euphorbia hirta, Mimosa pudica, etc. Weed biology. Weed biology refers to the study of different stages of the life cycle of any weed, that is from germination of seed to formation of seed. In fact, in any weed management program, the knowledge of weed biology is must for its success. Inadequate knowledge of the weed forms the major limitations in the development of suitable weed management technology. Weed biology includes the study on survival mechanism of weeds, dormancy of seeds and dominance mechanism of the buds and shoots, influence of climatic and adaphic factors on weed growth, population shifts, etc. This knowledge leads to identification of weak stage of the weed and also evolution of suitable control method that can be affected for effective control. Weed management. The method of weed control can be broadly grouped into 3 categories: mechanical, biological and chemical. These methods are employed either as pre-infested or post-infested measures. The different preventive measures used for weed management are mainly aimed to arresting the introduction and spread of the weeds to the areas not previously infested. For the success of any weed management program, adoption of adequate preventive measures is a prerequisite. Following are some of the major preventive measures which helps in better weed management. Adoption of good crop management practices. Various practices like cultivation of fast growing crop cultivars with spreading canopies in higher densities to offer smoothing effect on weeds. Proper placement of fertilizers, crop rotation, intercropping or mixed cropping are generally recommended. These practices offer strong competition against the weeds, leading to their suppression. Quarantine and weed loss. These laws are important in preventing the spread of weeds from one area to the other along with the seeds propagation material. Strict enforcement of laws can only prevent the spread and entry of certain exotic weed species. Some common example of weeds which need to be put under such laws in India to avoid economic and health hazards are Parthenium hirsitophorus, Phalaria minor, Cyprus rotundus, Striga species, Eichhornia corsyphus, Cynodon dactylon, Imperata cylindrical, etc. Methods of weed control. Mechanical control. Mechanical or physical method of weed control are under practiced since the man started cultivation. The mechanical methods forms an integral part of the weed management system. Different methods of mechanical control include tillage, hoeing, hand weeding, digging, mowing, burning, mulching, etc. Tillage. Tillage enables the removal of weeds from the soil by uprooting, resulting in the death of the same. Besides, it also buries the weeds. Tillage alone or in combination with good cropping method and chemicals is often the best and most economical method of weed control. It is done using implements drawn either by animal or by machine. Tillage is carried out both pre-plant and post-emergence. The efficacy of tillage for weed control is determined by the type of weeds to be controlled. Weeds without well developed and deep root system and weed seeds during deflowing leads to delay germination. Shallow tillage helps the weed seeds to remain on the surface, which germinate with the first rain and thus can be eliminated in young stage. In all such cases, the main aim remains to reduce the competition of the weed with the crop. Deep tillage facilitates the exposure of underground propagules like tuber, corns, rhizomes and make them non-viable. For such weeds, deflowing during summer months is recommended. Cultivation also leads to removal of aerial parts of the perennial weeds, such includes sprouting of the lower buds. In this turn depletes the store food of the weeds and make them weak. However, it is difficult to control the perennial weeds like Cyprus rotundus, Cynodon dactylon, etc., which propagate through underground parts like tubers, corn, rhizomes. In fact, tillage is one of the factors which helps in spreads of the weed propagules from one place to another in many cases throughout the field. Hoeing. It is the method of removing weeds manually using hoe, a widely used farm implement for weeding. It is a cheap and effective way of weed control, especially in the row crops. The control of annual and biennial weeds with shallow root system is more effective and complete control can be achieved. Mowing. It is a reasonably effective way of controlling annual weeds. However, it is done frequently to avoid flowering and fruiting. This method is commonly followed along roadsides, lawns and pastures. Height of mowing is important so as to prevent flowering. Mowing operation should be carried out either before flower initiation or practice of weed management under intensive cultivation. Digging. It is very useful for control of perennial weeds, especially with a deep root system and those propagating through underground parts like tubers, rhizomes, etc. But it is a slow and labor intensive practice and is restricted to a limited number of perennial weeds. Mulching. Mulching is one of the effective control measures which inhibits the weed emergence and growth by exerting smoothing effect. Different mulches used are green crop straw, dry or green leaf, plastic or poly sheets and other plant parts. Biological control. Biological control is generally defined as action of plants, predators or pathogens in maintaining another organism population's density at a lower average than would occur in their absence. Thus, regulation of an organism abundance below the level of economic injury is the target of biological control. Owing to the increasing pesticide problems, the adoption of biological control measures has gained momentum in recent years. This method is advantageous over the chemical method as it is essential, permanent, cheap, eco-friendly, environmentally safe and even effective in inaccessible areas. While selecting a biological control agent, following aspects should be considered. Number 1. The biological agent must ideally feed only on the target weed species. Number 2. Be free of its own predators and parasites and be resistant to those found in areas introduced. Number 3. Be adapted to the local climate, and number 4. Have the capacity to seek out the host environment. Weed control by insects. The classical examples of control of some specific weeds by insects are control of gourdweed, Hypericum perforatum by the gourdweed beetle, Chrysolina hypercae and Chrysolina quadrigemina, control of cactus by cactus moth, Cactoblastis cactorum, and cochineal insect Dactylopus indicus and Dactylopus tomentosus, control of Lantana camera by Cressidosomia lantana, Agromyza lantanae, Telca echino, control of Parthenium by Zygogramma bicolorata, a coleopteran insect, etc. However, in recent times a large number of insects have been identified for the control of various weeds in different countries. Weed control by plant pathogen. In recent years, plant pathogens have become a good biocontrol agent in controlling problematic weeds. Some common examples are: number 1, use of Alternaria macrospora and Puccinia heterospora for the control of Anoda cristela in USA. It was reported to be host specific and hence a potential biocontrol agent. Use of Cercospora rhodmani for the control of water hyacinth, Eichhornia crucifers. Number 3, control of Hydrilla vermicillata by Fusarium roseum. Similar works conducted on weed control in mulberry with the use of pathogen have revealed the rust fungus Puccinia ramagnolina as a potential biocontrol agent for the control of purple net sedge. The most obnoxious weed in mulberry garden. One more weed, Phyllanthus geniculata, has been observed to be severely affected by orange rust. Weed control by crop computation. The method exploits the differential growth habits, adaptabilities and competitive abilities of different crops and crop varieties to prevent, suppress or reduce the weed establishment. Crops which grow more rapidly and have spreading type of growth are often selected for the purpose. These crops are also called as smoother crops and compete with the weeds for sunlight. Plant nutrients moisture and carbon dioxide. Some of the important competitive crops are corn, sorghum, soybean, cowpea, cluster bean, etc. Weed control by chemicals. Employing chemicals for weed control constitutes chemical weed control. These chemicals are also known as weedicides. Herbicides are tools which enable man to grow desirable plants easily and cheaply. The herbicides are used not only to control weeds in agronomic crops, gardens, etc., but also to make the landscape more attractive, provide better cover and feed for cattle, wildlife, and improve management. They do not substitute for good husbandry and careful management. At present, herbicides constitute over 43% of the world pesticide market. Best results with herbicides are obtained when they are used in conjunction with other agronomical practices, including tillage. The use of herbicides has following advantages. These can be applied for weed control in crop rows where cultivation is not possible. Application of pre-emergence herbicides provides early seasonal weed control and produces the competition effects of weeds in early stage of crop growth. It prevents the possible damage to roots caused by cultivation. It reduces the need for pre-planting tillage and it's most effective in minimal tillage practices. Classification of herbicides or weedicides. The herbicides are classified based on the method of application, mode of action, chemical affinity and structure similarity. The classification on the basis of mode of application divides herbicides into two groups. Soil herbicides. The herbicides applied as pre-planting and pre-emergence are included in this group. Number 2, foliage herbicide. The herbicides applied as post-emergence on the plant parts are included in this group. The classification in the basis of mode of action are as follows. Systemic or translocated herbicide. The herbicides upon spray on the weed plants enter into the plant system and move in the vascular tissue throughout the plant system. Number 2, contact herbicides. The herbicide kills tissues which are very close to the point of application. Such herbicides should be applied thoroughly over the plant surface in order to kill the meristematic tissues in the buds and leaves. These may be either selective or non-selective. Based on the chemical affinity and structural similarity, the herbicides are classified as organic herbicides. These contains carbon and hydrogen are derived from acids. The formulations are mostly in the form of salts, esters or wettable powders. Most of these herbicides are not considered toxic. Inorganic herbicides. These do not contain carbon and hydrogen as constituents and are applied as water solutions or granules. These are not volatile. Mode of action. Herbicides bring about various physiological and biochemical effects on growth and development either after coming in contact with the plant or after reaching the site of action in the plant. They affect several factors of growth. Any one of all together constitute to the death of the plant. The herbicides molecules block the normal metabolic pathways and subsequently cause severe injury. The injuries thus caused exhibit different types of visual symptoms like chlorosis, defoliation, necrosis, morphological aberrations, marginal leaf burn, etc. In general, the different physiological and biochemical processes affected by the herbicides are: number 1, respiration and mitochondrial activities; number 2, photosynthesis; number 3, protein and nucleic acid metabolism; number 4, hydrolytic enzyme activities. Integrated weed management. In mulberry cultivation, weed pose a threat by competing for nutrients, water, sunlight and carbon dioxide, and ultimately reducing crop yield and quality. This ultimately affects the silkworm rearing and cocoon yield. Thus, adoption of appropriate weed management system is a must to keep the weeds below the threshold level of infestation in order to avoid mulberry crop losses. Manual intercultivation, tillage or use of herbicides are the commonly adopted methods in different crops. However, it is difficult to control the perennial weeds like Cyperus rotundus, Cynodon dactylon, etc. by tillage or manual intercultivation, which propagate through underground parts like tubers, cones, rhizomes. Herbicides, though have given good results, are not foolproof. They work out to be costly also. Further, adoption of biocontrol measures, which has gained momentum in recent years, is also not fully effective. Thus, in the recent years, adoption of integrated approach, that is adoption of tillage, chemical method and biocontrol agents has gained importance. In mulberry, manual intercultivation conducted during each crop is mainly aimed at removal of weeds. It is one of the costliest operations in the irrigated mulberry, involving a large number of man days. In spite of the repeated intercultural operations, the obnoxious weeds like Cyperus rotundus and Cynodon dactylon appear in each crop in high density. These cause immense crop loss. Flowing is a cheaper method of intercultural operations, but does not ensure effective weed removal from the field. In fact, the weeds gets buried in the soil during overturning. These weeds again established and compete vigorously with the crop during sprouting, also leads to spread of weeds in the field. Thus, to overcome the weed menace, though adoption of suitable management system, an integrated system was developed comprising of application of herbicides and intercultural operations. Immediately after pruning, the herbicide glyphosate, a post-emergence, non-selective, systemic and translocative herbicide, should be sprayed at the rate of 0.71% concentration, 600 liters of spray solution per hectare on the weeds. 2 applications per year are ideal for effective management of weeds. Intercultural operations should be conducted in alternate crops. This system not only enables effective weed management, also saves 250 man days per hectare. According to an experiment conducted at Central Sericulture Research and Training Institute, due to reduction in weed competition, plant growth was improved, leading to improvement leaf yield, that is 42.3 metric tons per hectare per year in treated plot as against 37.5 metric tons per hectare per year in control. Also, there was significant reduction in weed growth. At the end of the 4th crop, the incidence of above 2 weeds, Cyperus rotundus and Cyperus dactylon, in treated plots was only 6 and 3% as against over 30% in control. No residual toxicity of the herbicide was recorded either in soil or on silkworms. From the above account, it is very clear that weeds pose a threat in mulberry cultivation by competing on nutrients, water, sunlight and carbon dioxide, and ultimately reducing crop yield and quality. This in turn affects the silkworm rearing and cocoon yield. Thus, adoption of appropriate weed management system is a must to keep the weeds below economic threshold level of infestation in order to avoid mulberry crop losses. Adoption of integrated method is a new vista of weed management in mulberry and needs to be popularized to effective weed control. Weeds are unwanted and undesirable plants which interfere with the utilization of land and water resources and thus adversely affect human welfare. In mulberry garden, both monocot weeds Cyprus rotundus and Cynodon doclalan and dicot weeds Parthenium hesetophorus prevent lent. Other common weeds found in mulberry garden are Bavonia diffusa, Scytha rhombifolia, various amaranthus species, different members belonging to the family Compositae, etc. For the success of any weed management program, adoption of adequate preventive measures is a prerequisite. Adoption of good crop management practices and quarantine and weed law are important preventive measures in weed control. The method of weed control can be broadly grouped into three categories: mechanical, biological and chemical. These methods are employed either as pre-infested or post-infested measures. Mechanical method involves tillage, hoeing, mowing, digging, mulching, etc. Biological method involves utilization of few target specific insect diseases causing microorganisms, etc. And chemical control comprises of use of herbicides or weedicides. An integrated weed management package comprising of application of herbicides and carrying out intercultural operations has been developed in mulberry for effective weed control. Thank you.